Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my parents wasted all their money and now expect me to support them financially. I, 31 female, have been living out of home since I was 18. I left uni with a mid-size amount of debt, but I've managed to pay it off and I'll also save over £8,000 over the last 10 years. I have scrimped and saved to get to this point. My parents are good people and I love them, but they have made some terrible financial decisions over the years. When my grandmother passed, her house was sold and my parents received about £90,000. They treated my brother and I to an amazing Christmas and a lovely holiday. They also renovated parts of our family home. After all this, they still had about £50,000 left and, by their own admission, frittered away the remaining money rather than saving it. By the time I started uni 2 years later, I was told that I would need to take out student loans to pay for my fees. 8 years ago, they told us they were going to sell the family home and downsize to a flat. They managed to sell the house quickly and received about £250,000 for it. But there was nothing on the property market that they liked, so they decided to rent for a while until they found something they did. Within 3 years, all of the money was gone. Again, frittered away with nothing to show for it. Now they're in their 60s and renting for the foreseeable future with only a small pension each. My dad will be forced to retire next year and they can't afford their current rent without his salary. They have asked me for loans multiple times just to tide them over until payday. They do always repay the loans to me, but I've started feeling resentful of giving them money at all. My partner and I are trying to buy a flat, and all of my friends who currently own property have received help from their parents with a deposit. Not only are my parents unable to help me with this, they actively borrow money from my savings on a regular basis. Earlier this week, we were having a family meal for my dad's birthday. My parents were asking my partner and I about our property situation and asked if we would consider buying a 2-bedroom flat so they could move in with us and not worry about rent. I laughed at first, thinking that they were joking, but then realized they were serious. I told them that we wouldn't be doing that, as A, we couldn't afford a 2-bedroom flat, and B, even if we could, it's not my responsibility to house them. My dad argued that he and my mom had provided for me over the years, and now it's my turn to repay them. I told them that I've been virtually on my own since I turned 18, and just because they made poor financial decisions over the years, I shouldn't have to foot the bill. I said that I resent the fact that they could have helped me with my uni and maybe even a flat deposit, but instead, they spent their way into a life of living hand to mouth. This did not go down well. Both of them erupted at me and called me ungrateful. My brother told me that I was being entitled. Even my partner said I was overly harsh. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. Your language was harsh, but your parents misspent at least £300,000 according to your post, and now they expect to live for free off you for the next 30 years or so? No. Stop lending them money immediately. Your parents need to learn to live within their, albeit limited, means. Goodbye, Internet. At my last job, my main duty was the IT manager for the entire location, among other duties. I had been there for about 3.5 years at that point, and I was trusted by everyone. If I had something important to say, people listened. During lockdown, while other departments' budgets were getting slashed and employees were getting laid off, I was able to replace a lot of our aging IT infrastructure. At the beginning of my last year there, the owner hires a young, I only tell the truth, even though you won't like it, narcissist as his second in charge. He hired this bonehead as his successor to run this location, while the owner would focus on opening up a second. In the first 3 months, Bonehead upset everyone, to the point where 15 people from various positions leave the company to find other jobs. This is during lockdown, where a lot of people were thankful they had a job, and 15 people were like, I'm going to risk finding another job in the middle of lockdown rather than stay here. He was that bad. As Bonehead started to upset our customer base and our sales started to suffer, we switched over to cost-cutting mode. The owner had largely checked out at this point. So, longtime vendors were replaced with friends and family of Bonehead, services were downgraded or cut, pay plans for the sales department were jacked with, and further eroded the morale of the workforce. One day, Bonehead comes to me and tells me to stop doing safety checks and maintenance repairs on our products so sales could post larger sales grosses. I loudly objected and went to the owner, but as the owner is always happy to hear something about making more money, he threw his support behind Bonehead's idea. A few months of this goes by, and after he fired one of my employees on my birthday because he refused to give Bonehead access to the server room, it was restricted to me, owner, and employee. I knew it was time to go. I find a new job, put in my 2 weeks notice, and of course, Bonehead stops my direct deposit on payday, the day after I put my 2 weeks in. I decide it isn't worth working the extra 2 weeks and inform them that I'm out of there, while filing with the state over my wages being withheld. As I'm walking out the door, Bonehead reminds me I'm no longer an employee of the company and not to get involved with the company's affairs and possible legal repercussions if I say anything negative about the company. My new job pays more, less hours, less stress. Fast forward to this Monday, I get a call from my local internet provider. They tell me my internet service bill has gone unpaid for the last 6 months and will get cut off if I don't pay immediately. I log in and see my account is paid. So after a few back and forth, I find out that I'm still the point of contact for my last job's account on their internet service. Remembering what was told to me when I left, I just informed them I cannot get involved as I no longer work there. They asked me for an updated point of contact. If they cannot get one, they'll be forced to suspend their service. I repeated, I'm not allowed by threat of legal action to be involved in their affairs and left it at that. An hour later, a buddy I know who still works there called me and told me they had to stop working as their internet service had shut off. I played stupid, but it took 3 days to restore it. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my boyfriend's food on his birthday and getting him banned from a restaurant? I, 18 female, have been dating my boyfriend John, who's 20, for a little under a year. We have a pretty toxic-free relationship, but there's quite a bit of tension when it comes to me being vegetarian. I've been vegetarian since I was 11, and I have very strict morals around it. The one thing John has a problem with is me refusing to spend money on meat. Ever since I started making my own money, I swore to myself that I would never spend a cent of it on meat. On our dates, we usually split the bill, and sometimes he pays for it all. I told him if he orders something meat-free, I'd happily pay for both of us, but he never does. When he pays for my food, it's when I've spent money on the activity. Normally concerts or festivals. That's me paying 120 euros on tickets and him spending maybe 50 euros on food. His birthday was a few days ago, and we went out for dinner at his favorite fancy restaurant. He got the most expensive steak they had, along with a side salad and a bottle of wine. When we finished our food, I asked the waiter to split the bill, and John looked at me shocked. He asked if I was joking, and I said no. Then he told me he thought I was going to pay since it was his birthday, and he didn't budget for the meal. I asked him why he thought I would pay since I've been very clear about my rule, but he couldn't give me a reason other than it being his birthday. I told him I'd pay for the wine and the side salad, but he'd need to pay for the steak. He was furious with me and stormed off to the bathroom. I paid for my meal, the wine, and the salad, and I waited for him to come back, but he didn't. After waiting for 20 minutes, I left. I found him sitting on a bench near where we parked the car. I asked him why he left and reminded him he needed to go pay. He looked shocked when I said that and asked me if I didn't pay. I told him I had paid for everything but the meat, and he lost it. He started yelling at me, telling me I was selfish, that I needed to grow up. I stayed calm and told him he needed to go back and pay. He scoffed and walked away. I ended up driving home without him. Now he's saying it's my fault that he can't show his face in his favorite restaurant since he dined and ditched. It's a pretty small restaurant, so he'd 100% be recognized and kicked out. So, am I the jerk? Edit. To the people commenting about me not treating him on his birthday, yes, I did. I even dipped into my savings for his present. Not the jerk. Ignoring the vegetarian stuff, who orders the most expensive steak possible and then expects their partner to pay for them without having checked prior? And then storming off to the bathroom expecting that to pressure you into paying for it? OP, I hope you can see all the huge red flags here. Today I messed up by trying to impress a girl with my amazing cooking skills. So this happened last night and I'm still cringing at the thought of it. There's this girl I've been crushing on for a while now, and I finally managed to ask her out. She said yes, and I decided to invite her over to my place for dinner. I thought, hey, I can cook a decent meal, and girls love guys who can cook, right? Oh boy, how wrong I was. I decided to make us some fancy pasta dish I saw on one of those cooking shows. You know, the kind where they use words like al dente and reduction to make it sound like they're doing some next level stuff. I went all out, bought the ingredients, and even got a little bottle of wine to set the mood. Fast forward to the evening. She arrives, and I'm already sweating bullets. I start cooking, trying to play it cool, like I'm some sort of culinary genius. She's sitting at the counter watching me, and I can feel the pressure mounting. I'm chopping onions like a madman, trying to impress her with my knife skills, when I accidentally got my finger. It started to bleed, and I'm trying to play it off like it's no big deal. She's clearly concerned, but I assure her it's just a flesh wound. I wrap my finger in a paper towel and soldier on like the culinary warrior I am. I toss the pasta into the boiling water, and in my haste, I forgot to set a timer. No biggie, I think. I'll just wing it. Meanwhile, I'm trying to make small talk, but my mind is racing, and I'm pretty sure I'm just spewing out random facts about pasta and Italian cuisine. She's nodding along, probably questioning her life choices at this point. As I'm stirring the sauce, I realize I haven't tasted it yet. I grab a spoon, take a taste, and it's saltier than the Dead Sea. I must have mistaken the salt container for the sugar one in my nervous state. Panicking, I remember reading somewhere that adding a potato can help absorb the excess salt. So I grab a potato, peel it, chuck it into the sauce like it's some sort of magical salt-absorbing grenade. I finally decide to check on the pasta, and it's turned into a mushy, overcooked mess. At this point, I'm ready to admit defeat, but I figure I've come this far, so I might as well see it through. I drain the pasta, plate it up, and pour the sauce over it, potato and all. I set the plates down, trying to hide my shame, and we dig in. The first bite is a disaster. The pasta is a soggy mess. The sauce is still saltier than a sailor's vocabulary, and the potato is just sitting there, mocking me. She's trying to be polite, but I can see that she's going to need a gallon of water to wash down this culinary catastrophe. I refuse to admit defeat, so I muster up the most convincing smile I can and say, "Bon appetit!" She hesitates for a moment, then takes another bite, clearly trying to be polite. I can see the fear in her eyes, but I just keep shoveling the salty, soggy disaster into my mouth, pretending like it's the best thing I've ever had. As we continue eating, I try to salvage the situation by making more small talk, but it's clear that this meal has absolutely ruined the evening. She's giving me one-word answers and nervously glancing at the door, probably planning her escape route. Finally, she can't take it anymore. She puts down her fork, looks me dead in the eye, and says, "I'm sorry, but I just remembered I have an early morning tomorrow. I should probably get going." I can see the relief wash over her face as she stands up, and I know I've royally messed up. I walk her to the door, trying to play it cool, like I'm not a complete and utter fool. She gives me a half-hearted hug and says, "Thanks for dinner. It was interesting." And with that, she's gone, leaving me alone with my salty, soggy pasta and bruised ego. Bro, admit defeat to the girl next time and order delivery. Don't force your date to eat a trash meal. Where your real mess up was here is that you didn't realize that the effort is worth more than the result. Fire me? Have fun dealing with the FSA. So 3 weeks ago, I left my corporate small fry job making $12 an hour with tips for a cushy salaried $60,000 a year head chef position. The new job seemed to be going really well. I was enjoying it. The owner got some much needed time off and time to work on his reservations to the place. I knew I wasn't walking into the most well-maintained and clean environment and planned to really spruce up the kitchen. Keep in mind, I was the only kitchen staff they had. The owner seemed really nice. He only had to pop in for about 30 minutes a day to see if I needed anything from the store. My coworkers were all really nice, and all the regulars gave me high praise for my food. It was honestly a dream job for me. When I was going through the interview process, I had informed my potential new employer that I had some pre-approved time off at my old job, 3 days, to celebrate my 25th birthday with my husband and mother-in-law. 3 days because my mother and her boyfriend were coming from another state for their normal visit, and 2 days to celebrate my husband's birthday, all of which were spread throughout the month of June. First round of 3 days went by with no issue. I returned to work and had a good time. Next 3 days went by spending time with my mom. When I returned to work this last Tuesday, everything seemed fine. Yesterday, I went into work, not really having any prep to do, and being a thunderstorm day, it was slow. I maybe did $150 worth in food sales in my full 8-hour shift. I sent a text to the owner asking if he wanted me to shut down early, as was the example he set for me during the week of training. We did $300 in food sales, and he shuts down an hour early for it being too slow. He responded and said, "No, keep the kitchen open full hours no matter what." I understood, responded that I would without issue, and went about my night. That evening, about 10 minutes after I returned home, the owner asked me to call him. On the phone call, he informed me that our relationship was not working out and we needed to part ways. I had no warnings, no talking tos, and he could give me no reasoning other than, "You just had 6 days off and you wanted to close early. It seems you're just not the right fit." Now, my husband, mother-in-law, and myself were fuming, as it's kind of a crappy thing to do to an employee. But due to us being in an at-will state, there was nothing I could do to fight it. This morning, I'm on Indeed putting out more applications, and I noticed my old job was posted, but with a minor change. The new posting went from $60,000 a year down to $18 an hour, nearly half of what he agreed to pay me. This upset me. If he was just a decent human and had told me he couldn't uphold the original agreement for the salary, I would have agreed to a pay cut. I did really enjoy this job and the people that I was with. Instead, he beat around the bush and refused to give me any reasonings, making me believe I had done something wrong. So now I've concocted the revenge. I only worked for him for 12 shifts total. In those 12 shifts, I did some cleaning, but couldn't accomplish it all as it was a lot. So this morning, I went and grabbed the email for the FSA, Food Safety Administration for those who may not know, and I sent them a lengthy email about my concerns for this place. As a less detailed version, it included things like flooring being a safety hazard. There are literal chunks missing, allowing food to get stuck and people to get hurt. Refrigeration systems leaking and not being properly maintained. A large mold outbreak behind one of the food lines. Containers of veggies being used for pizzas that were dated as being opened mid-April. Suggested use time is 7 days fresh, 14 canned. Workers dropping food and picking it up off the floor before serving said dropped food to customers. My personal favorite, a bartender coming back with shakers filled with grated Parmesan cheese that molded. The owner telling her to pick the mold out and refill the shakers with the unmolded cheese. Plus more things that I won't include on here, but the state of the place was atrocious. I will update y'all if anything comes of this. I'm not sure if anything will. Either way, it's made me feel better knowing that there's a chance that there could be some backlash to an owner who has no common courtesy for their fellow workers. Edit, because people keep asking this, no, I was not okay with these conditions. Aside from the floor, it was just a lot of cleaning that I knew I would be able to get done within time. I only had 12 days to try and change anything, and that was not enough time to do a deep cleaning of a kitchen by yourself that you can't shut down. As for the gross food violations, I threw out what foods I could, and when I noticed the bartenders doing violations, I pulled them aside and spoke to them privately about trying to replace the necessary items. One person cannot change a whole crew in a few days. My girlfriend says I'm cherry-picking her flaws. I'm thinking about breaking up. We're in an 8-month relationship. She's my first girlfriend. She has this thing where she takes hours, and I mean hours, to wake up every time. So every time I wake her up, I need to come back every 20 minutes and try to wake her up again, or otherwise she'll sleep until 3 to 4 p.m. She's very grumpy whenever I try to wake her up, and as soon as she wakes up, she's all over her phone. She has a daily screen time of 12 hours plus on average. I told her both of these things bother me, and she said, "Just because you don't spend time on your phone doesn't mean I'm not allowed to," which I totally agree with. But like, when I leave the room to grab a drink, literally for a minute, she's already all over her phone. I just feel like it's unhealthy. And about the sleep thing, she said I don't let her rest. She sleeps for 12 plus hours every day, and I stopped even bothering to wake her up. Today, she refused to eat the food I made for her because it's too oily, and I understand. She's trying to keep her diet clean and got angry and said she was going home. My plate was less oily than hers, but she wouldn't even eat my plate. On occasions, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells when talking to her. She can get angry out of the blue, and that can last from minutes to hours, depending on what the reason is. A few days ago, she got mad because I didn't tell her it's raining, although I was bedridden and sleeping because I had a fever. She got really angry, and I spent the whole evening trying to cheer her up. Sometimes she'll just leave and ignore me when things don't go her way. Whenever I don't want to do what she wants to do, she gets upset and says, "Fine, I'll just walk by myself. You never want to do the things I want to do." Although ever since the relationship started, I've been trying to please her. Recently, I feel like we've been growing apart. She's on her weight loss journey, and I'm in my first internship program, and we both just focus on ourselves, seeing each other less and less. Today, after the food argument, we talked about this. I told her about the things that have been bothering me, and I told her I'm not really enjoying the relationship all that much. She said, "Maybe you should find someone that was raised by parents like yours." My parents are very toxic, and I still live with them since I can't afford to live by myself, and that really hurt. She said she can't change, and she thinks I'm looking for someone like myself, and that there are other parents like mine that can raise the kind of kids like I am. I don't know whether that was an insult pointed towards me or my parents, but it wasn't a nice thing to say. I'm unsure whether I'd want to be with a lazy person, but I'm unsure whether she's lazy. That's a subjective thing. But to me, spending most of your time on your phone and sleeping 12 hours a day is laziness. She is very supportive of me, she encourages me, and she helps out when needed. She's in general a sweet soul, but I'm not sure we're meant for each other as we have different values and views. Should I try to make it work since I love her and sincerely enjoy most of the moments we spend, or should I call it quits and just work on myself? So the whole point of dating is that you're supposed to try out people. There shouldn't be this much grief early on in a relationship. This should be the honeymoon phase. Break up, date around. You should break up. You two are so young. You've been together for only 8 months and have totally different ways you want to live your lives. It's clearly not a great match. You can have awesome times and very strong feelings for people who are not good matches. This is good practice for the future when you will sadly have to end relationships with other people who are also not good matches in some ways, but who are much more nicer to be around. If you want permission to break up, you have it. But if she sleeps for 12 hours a day, she needs to see a doctor and get evaluated for things like hypothyroidism. That's not normal. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you stay in the relationship or break up with them? Please let us know. If you're an active person, always getting things done and you stay on your grind, do yourself a huge favor and don't date a lazy person. You will end up losing your mind. Am I the jerk for not helping my family's restaurant because my brother was being paid and I wasn't? So I'm 17, female. My parents recently came into a fair bit of money, inheritance from my mom's side, and decided to buy out a local ice cream shop that was going out of business. They love that place because it's where they met, and it has a ton of sentimental meaning to them. They also hired my 18-year-old brother to work there because they want him to have a job experience before going off to college. They didn't offer to hire me, and I didn't ask because I already have a fast food job. Anyway, my house is pretty close to the shop, and my friends and I decided to meet up there yesterday for ice cream and to hang out. For reference, we're a group of 4 high schoolers. It was pretty busy, so we got in line. About a minute in, my brother came out of the back and waved me over. He handed me an apron and asked me to help out his coworker in the back because they had to clean the machines ASAP, but my brother had to open a second register because of how busy it was. I refused on the grounds that I wasn't being paid, and he said that I had to help out because it's the family business and because of how swamped the place was and how panicked his coworker was. He even offered to let my friend skip the line if I helped out for 10 minutes to give his coworker a hand and said I owed it to him to help out because I brought such a big group in. I decided that that would cause a scene in a packed shop and refused again. He huffed and waved me off, then went to open the second register. I went back to my friends and the rest of our meetup went well, but my brother kept giving me angry looks until we got our cones and left. Later that night, my parents confronted me and said that what I did was petty. They told me to work a shift the next day to make up for it, but backed off once I reminded them that I have an actual job that I was scheduled to work pretty much all day the next day. I ended up getting off scot-free, however my whole family maintains that I'm petty and lazy, and now I'm wondering if they're right. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This is one of the most black and white situations I've ever seen. If brother was just working to support the business, not taking salary, then I can see how your family would expect you to step up and contribute. But he gets paid, and your family expects you to work for free? Not the jerk. Bottom line is, you don't have to work if you're not getting paid. You're not an employee, and you have no obligation to that shop. If your parents wanted someone to help your brother, they could have come in themselves. My Karen fiance is demanding to be in my family's Christmas card. I, 37 male, am engaged to my fiance who's 31 female, planning on getting married at the end of this year. My family takes a Christmas card photo every year, usually around big events like graduations or parties when everyone is together, which isn't often. Years ago, my mom instituted a "not until you're married" policy to include significant others in photos and applied that rule to my brother when he was dating and engaged to his now wife. My fiance has had significant issues with this. Last year, when the family took photos shortly after she and I were engaged, she directed many snide comments to me about how excluded she feels. This year, she flatly refused to drive with me to a family graduation, saying how hurt and excluded she felt by this policy since we are getting married this year and the card is coming out the year that we're getting married. I've tried to explain that this isn't our card. This isn't our right to tell others who can and can't be on their card, and we could always have our own card to start our own tradition. She's made several comments about how surprised she is that I haven't stood up for her to my mother, even telling me that she's discussed this issue with others and they also are surprised that I wouldn't take a stand with my mother on this. She also made a point multiple times to say, "Good, less time to spend on photos with them at the wedding," implying a tit-for-tat response to this policy. I don't really know what to do. Am I the jerk? Your mother is very wise. Your fiancé is a bit of a main character, isn't she? Wow, and she's already planning retaliation at your wedding? Dude, you may seriously want to rethink things here. These are red flags, and her behaving like an entitled kid is going to cause some serious friction now and later. You are not the jerk. Your fiancé definitely is and needs some serious help. I get the rule when someone is dating, but if you're engaged, it does feel a little harsh. My family isn't exactly super open with other people in our photos either, but I think this is pretty rude, so soft you're the jerk. You are not the jerk. I get why your mom put this rule in place years ago. The last picture of my kids with my great-grandmother has my brother's ex-girlfriend in it, and they were about to get engaged. Your mom didn't make this rule new for your fiancé, so I don't know why she would be so upset by it. Is she being excluded in other ways? Am I the jerk for grounding my daughter after she called me a liar? My husband, who's 47, and I, female 40, are getting divorced. We have 3 kids together, Amelia, who's 17, and 2 sons, one who's 15 and one who's 4. When my husband and I met, we were both married to other people. He was my ex-husband's coworker. We met in one of their company's parties. We hit it off and we had an affair before we got divorced to start dating. Amelia was born shortly after we got divorced. We never felt like we should tell all of this to our kids when they were growing up, mainly because they were too young. Neither him nor I had kids with our exes, so we just threw away any wedding photos and pretended neither of those marriages ever happened. When or if the kids asked how we met, we told them it was through common friends. Well, now that we're getting divorced, Amelia has picked her dad's side. I can't really stop her from seeing him whenever she wants because our custody agreement is not over yet. So she often goes to his house after school and spends the weekend with him. He told her the truth. He's trying to get her to believe that I'm wrong in all of this. Although all I'm doing is supporting my son, he's trying to get her against me and against her brother. He told her that he has always wanted to tell them the truth, but I didn't allow it since it would make me look bad. That's obviously a lie, but Amelia believed him. When she came back home, she started arguing with me about why I never told her the truth. She called me a lying jerk. I tried to explain to her the truth and what her dad is trying to do. She told me she never wants to see me again and such. I got sick of that and grounded her. I took her phone and sent her to her room. This morning she wasn't talking to me. All she said is that she can't stand me and will try to leave to live with her dad. My coworkers think I was the jerk for grounding her. She's a confused teenager. I don't know what to believe really, so I'd like to read some outsider perspectives, please. Neighbor demands I pay for her flea treatment. Our dog gets treated monthly with vet-prescribed flea stuff. My neighbor, Jill, treats her cats for fleas with a blend of essential oils and garlic. I dislike Jill, but I've always been courteous to her. I don't argue when she talks about things I don't believe. I restrained my laughter when she told me she cares so deeply about the environment, so she just had to protest at the summit in Glasgow. I didn't even point out the irony in driving 4 hours in a 4x4 to attend. She acts like a veritable Earth Mother, taking every chance to remind us she doesn't use chemicals, boasting she makes her own soap, laundry detergent, deodorant. Good on her. I mean, they don't work, but I applaud her for her efforts nonetheless. Her claims of environmentalism are somewhat undermined by her flying to and from London every fashion season to buy new clothes. We see her as a pretentious hypocrite, claiming to be vegan except when at an all-inclusive resort, claiming to love rescue animals, then paying thousands of pounds for pedigree cats, calling our spaniel a mutt because he came from a rescue charity, so we can't be sure of his origins. Last week, without asking if he was friendly or if it was safe for her 7-year-old to play with him, Jill's youngest kid ran up to my dog and started enthusiastically cuddling and clinging onto him. Luckily, he was well used to our kids, so was very gentle. Jill smiled indulgently. I fought the urge to say dogs with a different nature someone could have gotten hurt. Sunday, Jill came to our door and said that she and the kids are covered in flea bites. I was like, right, thanks for telling me, and went to shut the door when she screeched, "From your mutt." A discussion ensued where she insisted our vet-prescribed flea prevention was inferior to her own mix of oils and garlic. I said, "Sounds delicious." Jill said she paid £250 to rid her house of fleas. I said, "Wow, garlic prices have really risen." When she insisted that we pay for the flea treatment, done by a company that uses chemicals by the way, I refused to pay. I reminded her that her kids hadn't even asked to get so close to our dog. She replied, "Oh well, what was I supposed to do?" My sister says it was judgmental of me to reply, "Parent them." I felt 100% in the right. My wife supports me. My sister is like Jill, but with the actual principle follow-through. She thinks we dislike Jill's lifestyle, but it's her hypocrisy we don't like. But I'm now wondering if I was rude like she says. Well, I know I was, but I feel justified in it. Maybe I should pay half. Am I the jerk for being judgmental, sarcastic, or rude? My sister says I am. Not the jerk. If she loved animals, she'd know garlic is not safe for cats. She's shorting their lifespan by quite a bit. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.